Okay. I guess we'll wait for a couple of minutes, Manish. That's fine by you. Manish, you there?
Yes, 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 sure. Completely fine. Completely fine.
Right, right. Thank you.
Yep, let me know when it is about to start. Huh?
Right, right, right. Right. Thank you. Yeah, so I guess we can start now. We have some 15, 16 people. Thank you, Manish and Kalyanalaxmi. Thank you for joining us. And yeah, I welcome you all. And so I was told about this thing, anti-synergy, which the term which Manish himself has coined, uh, and he explained this to me. And the first time I heard it, it was like okay, and then later like gradually like grew with this idea, and then it grew into me. So like I quite see it like as something ubiquitous. Like maybe in a few minutes you'll also realize how ubiquitous this is in nature. uh, I mean, I just can't get this out of mind. So I just called him up, Manish, and I thought like maybe maybe I think I can get few more people obsessed with this idea. And then I felt that we should have something that more people should know about this. And as you might be aware of it already, in the from the poster, like Manish has did a presentation on this at Oxford University. It was a global summit in 2013. And yeah, I think you guys will love this, and you could very much relate to this and see it happening around you everywhere. So yeah, please take over, Manish. And by the way, this will be very informal discussion kind rather than a presentation or something. So you can just join in and just maybe interrupt or ask him any questions in the chat box or maybe in the voice even, anything at all. So yeah, Manish, please take over. Yeah.
So thank you, Dushyant. And I'm Manish here. We would be presenting myself and the other co-researcher who has presented along with me this topic at Oxford as well in 2013. Both of us would be presenting here. So Anyways, the starting would be by Kalyanalaxmi.
Wish you all a very good afternoon. Am I audible?
Yeah, you are. Yeah,
You
you
are
are.
Yeah, thank you so much. At the outset, let me begin by thanking all of you for your time and attention. And I must say that, Manish and I are also really looking forward to this discussion with such enthusiastic academicians, Like personally, I have left academics long back after I joined into the banking sector, but it's nice to see such enthusiastic academicians, and I really hope we would get some ideas to refine the concept better. So let me just make a couple of quick points before we get on with this discussion. Like Dushyant rightly pointed out, this is going to be a very informal discussion, so anyone anywhere can just like you can just put on your mic and start speaking, not an issue. And secondly, this concept of anti-synergy, if you'll realize when we are discussing its conceptual framework that, like Dushan again pointed out, that it's not something out of the box, so it's not like rocket science. It is a phenomena which is so evident, which is so common, and I'm sure all of us will be able to relate it because these thoughts must have occurred to even to all of you at some point of time or the other. So, like I said, I and Manish are also really looking forward to this discussion so that we can build upon this concept further. Okay, now let me begin by just sharing an experience with all of you, which goes right back to while I was at school. I studied in a school in Pune, and I remember when I was in the eighth standard, we had this huge incentive that there was a visit planned to Ayuka, and about 45 students would be taken along for this visit to Ayuka. That was what was told to us. And in order to select which 45 would be visiting Ayuka, uh, it was decided that there were three divisions in the eighth standard, and it was decided that the top 15 scorers in science in the term end exam would be shortlisted for this visit. Okay, now of course at that point in time, being a very the hopeless student that I was at science and maths, my only concern was how do I break into that top 15. I score enough to get into that top 15 so that I could visit Ayuka. But in retrospect, today when I think about it, it really strikes me that what might be the reason for the selection criteria that the top 15 scorers would be shortlisted for that visit. So it's a question that strikes me today, and I'm sure your thoughts would probably give me an answer to that. What do you think about it? What are your thoughts on it? Why do you think this was the selection criteria?
Could it be sincerity? If they are really passionate about science, then they will really put in the work to get into the top 15, according
Possible?
to me.
Possible, completely possible.
Is it because it may be because they believe marks matter? Marks, they are using marks as a criteria for judging passion in science and you know
Absolutely, yeah. And any other thoughts?
Yeah,
So,
Ibrahim says in chat that probably it's because this easiest one.
oh,
Probably, and Rahul in the chat says probably because they don't want to take interviews, conduct personal interviews.
I so completely agree with you. I mean,
It might
I
also
personally, yeah.
be that the top 15 students might have an edge over the other students in science, in understanding, because they are better scorers.
Hmm, hmm, hmm. Okay, so I think there's consensus among us that probably the marks have been considered an indicator of our understanding or knowledge or passion about science. Uh, and of course, it's the easiest way because probably asking everyone to write an essay on why do you want to visit Yucca and evaluating 180 such answers and then shortlisting 45 would be a very tedious task, right? So yes,
And the evaluator, and in that process, the evaluator himself or herself should also be capable enough to evaluate those subjective answers?
Yeah. So, when I started with this experience of mine, you'll find a lot of such experiences in your environment. Let's just talk about a few of them. Who would you consider the most successful cricketing captain of India? Well, I used to be a huge fan of cricket once upon a time, though I've like kind of lost track of the game long back. So I don't know, but I think it would be someone who has won under whom India has won the maximum number of test matches or the maximum number of one days, right? He would be regarded as the most successful Indian captain. Would you agree?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Similarly, let's talk about an organization, a business concern. Who would it consider its most efficient salesperson?
Well, obviously, like who's got more sales and stuff like that.
Exactly, the one who gets the most number of sales, right? Okay. No, even if it's like a private insurance company where you're sold insurance policies with all kind of stuff which is not true on the belief that 1 year down the line I'll quit the company and change my mobile number so that nobody can track me 1 year down the line. So the point is that here the number of units of sales acts as an indicator for the efficiency of the salesperson. Similarly, if you look at, if we can quickly run across a few other examples, what about a researcher? How would you evaluate someone's research aptitude? By probably counting the number of papers presented, papers published, right? Or
Impact factor of the journal.
impact, right?
Or for that matter, in universities there is something known as flying squad. You're doing examinations. Whose you all of you must have come across those people. That in the squad there would be 4, 5, 6 senior persons, and who would be going on in the examination halls, and they would ensure that there is no unfair means used. Okay. What about, say, two situations? In one situation, the squad comes and reports to the university that there was no unfair means used in my in the classes whom I visited. I visited 10 classes and 10 days consecutive, total 100 classes I visited, but there was no unfair means used. And the other squad comes and says, I have visited 5 classes only one day, and in those 5 classes, in 2 classes, I have found unfair means these are the cheats of these things which students were using. So there is a high chance, very high chance, that the university might presume that the squad who has visited 100 classes and who was not able to found any case of unfair means, they have not done their job well. They have not visited any classroom actually. They have just stayed at a place and they are reporting that they have visited 100 classrooms and no unfair means. Instead, it is quite possible that those 100 classrooms, actually there was no unfair means. These people did more sincere job, and but there was no case of unfair means. So what it ends up is that in all these cases, what's common? Can you please try to figure it out? In all these examples, all these cases, what is common in all these?
Some performance criteria and numbers are used to judge the
The
excellence or the
quantifying performance,
skill of a person.
yeah, performance or skill is being quantified, like measured, actual numbers के साथ.
Yeah, time on target. I mean, in each of these, there is some subjective variable which is being measured, like whether it's interest in the subject of science, whether it's sporting talent, or whether it's sincerity in the job done, or it is research aptitude. All of these are very subjective qualities. And in order to measure these subjective qualities, there is an objective parameter which is being used. Like to measure your knowledge or interest in the subject of science, you're using marks as a criteria. Or to evaluate someone's sporting talent, you are actually using the parameter of the number of runs scored or wickets taken or the number of matches won under someone's captaincy or the number of research papers published or presented to measure research aptitude and so on and so forth. So the bottom line is that in each of these cases, there is a subjective variable which is being measured. And in order to measure this subjective variable, some objective parameter or some objective index or numerical scale is being used. Okay. Now, this brings us to a very pertinent question that, is there any problem in doing this? It's fine, right? I mean, if you're using a scale or an objective parameter to evaluate some subjective variable, what's wrong with that? Is there any problem? I think Manish would be better, poised to explain that.
What I have to say in this is, we can talk of one example. I think it would be the last of the series of these examples, but more related with this science of physics, or with the simple process of measurement. What happens when we measure anything? The simplest of thing is that if we want to measure a temperature of some liquid in a glass of water, say a glass of water. So what would we use to measure the temperature? Would we use a thermometer, or can we use a pencil or some other thing? Certainly we would use a thermometer, which is a good, having a tip of something which is a good conductor of temperature. So when we dip this thermometer in the liquid, it extracts some heat out of that liquid, and in proportion with the temperature of the liquid, there is some column, mercury column, where it rises, the mercury rises, and it gives us the temperature. In this process, some of the temperature of the liquid is lost during the process of measurement. It is lost, it is utilized in expanding the mercury column. Are you getting it? Am I able to convey it?
Yes, yes.
So some of the temperature, some of the heat, it would be lost in expanding the mercury column. And theoretically, we may say that just to decrease the temperature of the liquid, it's good enough to measure it infinite number of times. But practically, even if we measure it, so the property should be of the thermometer, the property should be that it should extract as small heat as possible, so that it doesn't change the that property of the liquid. Temperature is not changed to a large extent, but it has to change it infinitesimally. It cannot, this change cannot be zero, because if it is zero, it means that you are using a bad conductor. You are using a pencil, a pen, a plastic to measure the temperature. So this plastic piece will not extract any heat, but at the same time, it will not measure the temperature as well. Is it okay? Is it making some sense? So what we want is that if the temperature is less, so less effect should be there. If the temperature is more effect should be there. And the temperature which is reflected in the thermometer, that should be proportional to this, the temperature or the heat content which is in this liquid. What happens here, that in the process of measuring this physical property of temperature, we actually change the temperature of that liquid. This happened because we wanted to measure the temperature in objective terms. If we only have to is it cold, so that we can tell without measuring anything, because if it is, we are seeing some dew drops on the outer surface of the glass, so it might be some cold. So if we have to measure, if we have to report it in terms of subjective thing, in subjective terms, it is very hot or it is very cold, so that we need not measure. But the moment we try to put some subjective thing in objective terms, so there comes this criteria, or there comes this measurement technique, where in process of measuring, the property is actually changed. And when we want to report some subjective property, so for example, there is an organization in which there are many components. For example, if we take this education sector, so there is a education sector in which the different components are students, teachers, examination authorities, evaluators, and research papers, publishing houses, and book publishers, and all these are components of this education sector where the goal of the system is there are two factors. One is the goal of the system, and then there are individual components. This system is made up of different components only, and the goal of the system in this case is say evolution of the education sector as a pool of knowledge and how to implement that knowledge for the betterment of human life, something like this, which is again a subjective thing. And within that, there are different components. For example, the publishing houses, policymakers, publishing houses have a goal that they would publish only good quality and original research, and students have a goal that I have to secure a good number of marks so that I get a good job, and teachers have a goal that I should teach well, and maybe I should also be publishing these many number of papers, or the PhD scholars have a been allotted a goal to publish at least 5 national and 2 international papers. I don't know what is the criteria nowadays, but these many papers should be published, then only your PhD would be awarded. And so what happens that if there are, say, 10 number of ways to perform the task, and out of those, one way is the ideal way for the component in order to fulfill the goal of the system. But within that goal, all the components themselves have one their goals which are misaligned with the goal of the system. You are not I'm sorry to say you, but as a student, I was not studying for the sake of the betterment of the knowledge pool and the pool of the knowledge and to make the human society a better place to live. I was not studying for that. I was studying to get my master's done, completed. Then I was studying to get this particular exams. So my goal as a component of this system, my goal was shifted at different instance of time, and because of that, the best possible way, which I was in fact looking for the last year, previous year question papers while preparing for an exam. I suppose you people have also looked for it. Did you bother about the previous year question papers while preparing for any exam?
Well, yeah, I certainly did.
Yes, sir, definitely.
Of course, most of them and any rational person might have done it. So the previous year question papers that we look for, because our purpose, the purpose of the exam is to select the best quality students. But our purpose was not, our purpose while looking for exam previous year question papers was not to become the best quality student. Our purpose was to become, to be able to crack this exam. So the moment, so one way what the organization has expected of us, that we would be having knowledge of this particular field and this some particular concepts should be cleared, and we should be able to think better and apply the concepts, application oriented. But we have ourselves framed our own goal, the goal of the components. I'm talking only about one component, we as a student, that it should be to crack this exam. And for that, our procedure has shifted. So the methodology that we adopt as a component is different than the methodology what we are expected to adopt as a part of the system to fulfill the system's goal. But we start adopting a methodology to fulfill our own components' goal. Just a minute.
Yeah, just taking this example forward, when we are talking about the education sector, as Manish rightly said, that there are different components. Now let's look at them one by one. Like he said, the goal of the system would be probably to enhance the pool of knowledge and apply it for the betterment of society and human life, and so on and so forth. I mean, you can read up Amartya Sen to what is the utility of education. But yeah, coming to the components, what do you think as a policy maker? What would be my goal as a policy maker? Like if you were the Minister of Human Resource Development in the Government of India, what would be your goal as far as the education policy or education system is concerned? What do you think would be your goal?
One
Ensuring, yeah.
So one thing that's definitely needed to be taken care of is the test exam method of what we have right now. So as we all know, it's just very like it's just competitive, and it's all about just getting marks rather than just actual education. So something needed to be done. Like
Absolutely. Now, let me point out one thing here. Have you heard about the Human Development Index? I'm sure all of you have. There are certain criteria that have been determined for evaluating where a country stands on the Human Development Index. One of the criteria here is what is referred to as the educational attainment. Now, educational attainment, as the phrase sounds, is a very subjective concept. And in order to measure what is the extent of educational attainment of a particular country, there are two criteria that have been identified. Firstly, it is the level of adult literacy. And secondly, what is the gross enrollment ratio in primary, secondary, and tertiary education? And when we say enrollment, all we mean is that your name is registered in some educational institution or the other. So these are the two criteria: literacy and enrollment, gross enrollment ratio. Okay. So if I, as a policy maker, I want my country to do well in the Human Development Index, my goal, which would be to enhance educational attainment in the country, would actually get narrowed down to ensuring high levels of literacy rate and high levels of gross enrollment ratio. Okay, so if all my kids in the age group of 6 to 10 are enrolled with some school or the other, effectively I have managed a high rate of gross enrollment ratio. Okay, but the question remains, being registered in an educational institution, does that transpire necessarily into high levels of educational attainment? Do you think so?
not at all.
Not at all.
Because if they are just enrolled in school, you cannot just say that yeah, they are like getting proper education and all such. There needs to be something else to
There are
measure that.
many places, still many schools that don't have like good teachers who themselves have better knowledge. So we
Exactly.
also need to see the level of knowledge the teachers also have.
Yes, you're absolutely right. I mean, I'll request you to, like when you have some time, just Google something called the Pratham survey. There was an NGO called Pratham, which did a very comprehensive survey long back. I mean, it was, I think, about 7 to 8 years back. They did a very comprehensive survey in which they found that the students enrolled in the 8th class were not able to read textbooks which were prescribed for third standard students. Okay. Or I'll also refer to a very eye-opening kind of survey that was done when I was doing my master's in the Pune University, wherein one of our teachers did a survey, which was meant for again MA students, not in our in our department, but in other colleges. And there were some very simple questions put forth. I remember two of them offhand, so let me just tell you what they were. Question number one was, how do you add 1 divided by 2 plus 3 divided by 5? 1 by 2 plus 3 by 5. That was one question. And like I mentioned right at the beginning, I myself was a very hopeless student of maths, and I just like hope to get past 10th standard so that I would never have to do any maths again in my life. But 1 by 2 1 by 2 plus 3 by 5 is definitely not 4 by 7, right? That was the answer which was given by a huge number of students who were surveyed. Okay. Another question, again, these were students of Masters of Economics. Another question put to them was, what is India's central bank called? And the answer given was Central Bank of India. Okay, I mean, it's not something we should laugh about, but yeah. So, as you can see, that they were enrolled, but they were not having the desired level of knowledge, again, which is a subjective concept. But as far as the government figures go, your gross enrollment ratio has gone up, right? You have high levels of adult literacy. You have high levels of gross enrollment ratio. So as a policy maker, my target, my goal has been achieved. Okay. Think about students. Students should ideally be participating in the education system to gain knowledge, and at the end of the course get a good job, I guess. Uh, do you think so? As students, what is your biggest motivation to participate in the education system?
Money.
I guess fear of society, our parents asking us to study, everyone else like educating themselves, like so-called education, not exactly educating,
True.
but yeah,
Becoming independent, I mean, how long can you live off of your parents or your relatives?
Right. So you hope to get a job at the end of the process, right? I mean, that's a very big motivation.
Yes, in a way.
Yes. Again, there are some very long and complicated theories about how education and employment are directly related. And you have a Nobel laureate, Joseph Stiglitz, who's written a brilliant piece on it. It's called the screening theory of education, where he directly establishes a link between the education sector and the employment arena. Okay. Of course, a contrasting view to this is also put forth by one of India's greatest development economists, Amartya Sen, who says, and I would quote him, the bettering of human life does not have to be justified by showing that a person with a better life is also a better producer. Okay, let's put that aside. But as a student, ideally your goal should be to gain knowledge of the subject. But because your knowledge of the subject is going to be tested by the marks that you secure in that subject, and therefore your objective in a way shifts from gaining knowledge to being able to score well in the exam. Am I right?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, all gone through this phase, so please don't worry. Yeah, so my goal as a student also shifts from wanting to gain knowledge of the subject to just scoring well in the exam. Similarly, an educational institution. What should be the goal of an educational institution? What do you think should ideally be the goal of the institution?
Impart knowledge.
I think preparing the students to actually face the necessary requirements, at least in a practical approach, if not like mastering them with all the skill sets they need. At least instead of like teaching a person, just giving an example, instead of learning that one person buys 60 watermelons, I think it's better if a person knows how to calculate the tip percentage to tip a waiter in the restaurant.
Right. Okay. That sounds good. So basically, preparing its students to face the realities of the world. Can we vaguely
Yeah,
sum it up that way? Yes. Okay. And what do educational institutions do? I mean, I was a couple of months back. I had one of my a niece of mine had come over, and she was attending her online classes, in which very frequently I heard her teachers say that this particular chapter carries a weight of 8 marks in the exam. So if you can master these 3-4 steps, you are assured of getting 8 marks in your exam. Okay. And that there are other bits where they talk about if you're able to do this, then these are frequently asked questions in the IIT JEE. And by the way, she comes from Andhra Pradesh, where there is in any case a lot of craze about IITs and all, right? So once the IIT results are out, if you switch on to any Telugu channel, you'll find these advertisements of colleges and coaching institutions which talk about how many of their students have actually cracked the IIT exam. So their purpose.
ఒకటి రెండు 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 Yeah, that's basically the rankings that they scream about in TVs. Yeah, I mean,
Absolutely.
maybe
And
I'll share some link probably for those in the group. They're funny as hell. I'll tell you what, they're funny as hell. I'll show you. Wait.
no, that is so true, and if you hear the tone, the way they say it is as if they won a battle and come out, like it's the fourth battle of Panipat that they've just won, and by ensuring that 8 of their students have made it through to the IIT. So it's just crazy. So an educational institution whose purpose should be preparing its students to face the realities of the world has actually been narrowed down to ensuring 100% result in the exam, uh, you know, how many of the students made it through the different whatever competitive examinations, so that they can show these figures and inspire other students to come and join them next year. That's their only purpose. Okay, so their goal again gets shifted over here. Similarly, that of researchers. Uh, to write a good research piece, it takes you anywhere between 2 to 3 years, if at all you're actually able to write one. Okay, but I'm sure you must have heard of people like writing, publishing every 3 months. I really wonder how they manage to do it. But here again, the goal of the researcher, which should be to be doing substantial research and contributing to knowledge, it actually boils down to publishing research papers or attending conferences. Okay, because that is what in case of teachers, that is what their API is. I'm sure many should agree on that. API, would you like to say something about API?
This is such a prevalent thing. Ultimately, what happens is the moment we intend to check or evaluate the performance of a performer, we put in place an evaluation mechanism. Okay, and this mechanism shifts the preference of the performer from performing to satisfying the evaluation mechanism as much as possible. Previously, my goal was only to be able to sell as many items as I can on in this shop. But the moment I got to know that the shop owner will ask me at the end of the month that how many units have you sold, and depending on that he will tag me as a good salesperson or bad salesperson and my increment and all those things. So instead of trying to sell as many things as possible, I started trying to sell as many units as possible by whatsoever means as possible. So it is that the moment we intend to check or evaluate the performance, mm, we have to put an evaluation mechanism, and this evaluation mechanism, shifts the preference of the performer now prefers to satisfy the evaluation mechanism as much as possible, so as to he may score maximum possible index on the scale of the evaluation mechanism. This shifts the motivation for preference, because now the preference is not to perform, but the preference is to attain the good ranking on the evaluation mechanism scale, and this actually takes a toll on the performance. So this is what I say, that measuring the performance degrades the performance. It shifts the center stage of the performer from performing to achieving well. So as you might agree that we may be very curious to learn as much mathematics and different branches of mathematics and scope of knowledge uh, in mathematics when we are mathematics student. But before 1 day or 2 days before the mathematics exam, we are not that much interested in different branches of mathematics and what is studied in topology, what is studied in so different branch of mathematics. But we are more studied in the previous year question papers, and because now we are being measured after 2 days. So now we have to shift our goal from attaining knowledge to say scoring well in that evaluation mechanism. And all the more after we get the question paper in our hands. This is the example which I had shared with Dushyant earlier as well in our during our conversation, that the moment we get the examination question paper, then we don't think of the whole syllabus also. Then we think only of the 5 questions which are there in the question paper. So I'm sure you will also acknowledge this, that during the examination hall, we are not thinking about the how good the mathematics subject is, and what else can we do in this mathematics subject. We are just bothered about those 5 questions, 6 questions, 2 questions which have been asked in the exam. So we are not thinking of being a Ramanujam. We are thinking of just passing this maximum score. उसमें से भी अगर 5 में से if we have to attempt only 3 questions, so which 3 questions are that which we can do the best? So this is that the purpose of the exams was to identify the best student, but the student himself has uh, taken out some different strategy, and that this strategy of attending last year question papers and all these things, this strategy is not what the organization expects us to follow. Organization expects us to follow some strategy which is ideal regarding the goals of the system, goals of the organization. But we have attained a different strategy as a student, which is best for us to be able to perform well in that evaluation mechanism. So what the sentence analogy says is that the moment you wish to measure something, you are actually degrading the performance of the rational human being. The rational human being, and if this is the case, and we are talking only about a single component, the student. The same is with the teachers, with the policy makers, with evaluators, and everybody. Just imagine that when all the components shift their ideal strategy, they are misaligned with their strategy, practical strategy is misaligned with the ideal strategy, what is expected by the system, then the whole strategy of and the whole output of the system, that is put so much misaligned that even if the ultimate goal of the system is designed keeping in the best interest of the system, of the components themselves deviate their individual component say objectives, so that the whole objective of the system shifts. But here, every component, the beauty of this theory is that every component manages to attain the very good scores in their individual terms. The student attains the very good percentage of marks because not just examine, just see a hypothetical case where all the components deviate in the best of their own interest, and they come up with the best possible scores. But the strategy of this whole system prices that if the teacher is not having that much time and he chooses some of the last year question papers to present as a question paper of this year, he is not going to prepare any, because preparing a question paper is also such a tedious task and brainstorming session type thing. So they don't want to prepare it. They are just going to pick up some 2-3 questions from last year, some 3-4 questions from before last year papers, and they are preparing this year question paper. And the student, this is not correct thing, but the teacher can give a question paper within half an hour using this not advisable, non-advisable method. And the student who has studied last year question papers, they do well, and they sometimes score 90 or 95% or sometimes 100% marks, and then they come up with flying colors. But he is not having a good knowledge of the subject. So individual components come up with flying colors with maximum scores, but the whole essence of this education system, that falls. And this is not only about the cases where the performance or something is indicated in terms of numerical values. Anywhere where subjective quantity is measured in some objective terms. Suppose a teacher enters a class and there is a class of 30 students, 28 students stand up and say good morning sir, and 2 students are sitting. They didn't stand up and they didn't bother to say good morning, sir, because no marks are allotted on that or whatever the reason. What the impression teacher might carry is, it should not be so, but the impression that any rational person or the teacher might carry is, these two students don't pay attention to my class and they don't respect me. Here, the standing of the student and saying good morning has become a mark of respect, and which is not always true. Because no matter how dislike I'm having, how much I dislike my boss, I would say good morning, sir, good morning, madam, when I face him. Saying good morning doesn't necessarily mean that the person wishes my morning to be good. Uh,
This may be even extended to playing the national anthem in every
Yes,
movie.
yes, 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 very true, very true. If you don't stand up and stand in attention position while national anthem, many people will tag the photos saying this is anti-national element. He is not standing, he is just sitting or lying down. But standing in the position of attention does not mean that I am a national. I am very too patriot. It doesn't mean like that.
Often were the cases where there were handicapped people, and it turned out much later that after beating them up, did they realize that they're actually handicapped,
Yes,
or
yes,
they
yes.
were beating up
It
them
was their
handicapped,
news
or
as
they
well. It
cannot
was
stand
their
up right
news as
now.
well. It was their news as well some time back. Here the one particular person, so the person stood up and said good morning. I'm saying that yes, he's a very obedient student, or very, or these are the symbols, these are signals, these are symbols and objective methods to convey that I have a subjective parameter which is respect for you in my heart, but it doesn't work. It doesn't work this way. That if someone is helping an aged person to cross the road, so we presume that he is such a nice fellow. It's not mandatory. Likewise, it's also not mandatory that every person who has not helped an aged person to cross the road is not a nice fellow. He may be better than that, but maybe because they were having some other, because of any other reason, they might. So it's not always necessary. That's the signal or symbol which is there. Likewise, just as Dushyant mentioned that standing for a national anthem or not standing for a national anthem, standing for a national anthem, but it is such a prevalent issue and it makes the thing so easy, because there are if I'm standing for the doing the national anthem, so that's a very easy method to convey to others that or to make others believe that I am a patriot because I stand during the national anthem. And the other fellow who was sitting there, he was not standing, so he's not that much patriot as I am. So patriotism is a subjective quality, and to show the patriotism, there is a signal, there is a symbol to stand up during the national anthem. Or if 10 people are shouting slogans in the name of an enemy country, that this country Murdabad, and they are, and if I don't agree with them, I say that don't call any other enemy country as Murdabad, so they will say, sure, you have a very soft corner for that. So calling the name as you go to hell or Murdabad, it means ki I am very much in against that. It's not. If I get any imported item from that country at a very low cost, I will buy it. So that's a totally different thing, that whether I agree with them or not. But there is a simple symbol. If I ask someone ki, if I visit someone, some ailing person in the hospital, and I say ki, how are you doing? I was very bothered about you. And another person also came, but he didn't ask this. Suppose a hypothetical situation that two people, two friends went to a hospital, and one of them asked, how are you doing? How is your health now? I was very bothered about it. And the person who is admitted in the hospital, he replies to it. After listening to his, he replies that yes, I am very well now, I am comfortable, everything is well, touch wood, now I will be discharged from the hospital after half an hour and I will go home, no need to worry. After this, the second person who has not asked about the welfare of this person, he goes away. thinking that okay, I got my answer. No matter I have asked it or not, I got the answer and I'm going now. So what that erring person would think of is कि इसने तो पूछा ही नहीं, यहाँ तक आया हालचाल भी नहीं पूछा. But the other thing is that it's completely possible that the second person was more bothered as compared to the first person, and this is so much uh, it's
If,
right.
if I may add something, Manish, would you please let me to?
Yes, please.
Yeah. So because let's if extending further, this is not just for simple things like I mean, not to say the education is rather simple, but like the ubiquitousness of this. If you like see the model of the democracy itself,
Uh-huh.
it is extremely anti-synergetic in the
Yes, of
sense
course.
that what's at the top is the number of votes you can get.
Number of
So
votes. That's all. That's all.
so
It is such an
that's
anti-synergetic, no? It is such an anti-synergy. That is the ultimate say of anti-synergy.
right. That's the something that I can think the massive scale and practical results that we've seen.
Yes.
You see politicians coming up with some populist scheme every day because
Yes.
it's not people's welfare or people's
There is a model code of conduct which it becomes applicable after the declaration of the election dates. That is also because of this only. That after that you should not announce any scheme because on the basis of that scheme people will start voting for you. But that doesn't help that way because they announce it just 1 week before the or 1 day before the model code of conduct is implemented.
So yeah, the first thing, one thing that you've pointed out is that like once we introduce some metric, the moment we that is actuated, everybody starts running behind to score better in that metric or that measurement system. And so the same is happening with that the politicians that we have, are mostly into like getting the vote. It's not even like the people that they want, it's just the vote. What I mean is like
Of course,
you
of
get
course,
more votes by rigging or whatever, it doesn't matter to them. At the end of the day, all
it
they
doesn't
want
matter to them.
to be in
And
the power and
uh,
please as many people and get as many votes.
yes,
And for that they divide people into sections. Like they say that this is
but
the
we need
religion
not think uh, to up to that extent also. That is also a very good example of anti-synergy. But uh, we as a single human beings also say like that one. I remember a very small experiment I did that we were invited. We 4 5 of our staff was invited at a person's place, and while coming back, they just appreciated the food also and said thank you and all that those things. And I asked one person who was there just to record their just to pay attention to what they say about we four people after we left. We were leaving at the same time. I didn't say anything. I didn't say thank you. I didn't say congratulations. I didn't say anything. I just said, okay, we are leaving. And we came out. And after that, about 20 minutes, there was a discussion about how did this person behave. He is not very suited for to be called for any invitation. In one of the articles, there, suppose take an example of, I'm seeing that in the chat box there is some mention about Ibrahim Fadji. I will come to it. Uh, Suppose there was a club, P club, where it was named as Best Friends Tea Club. Okay, the name suggests that those who are best friends will join this club, tea club, and uh, in the other way, those who have joined this best friends tea club are best of the friends. So out of the 20 people, suppose 18 people have joined it now, and two have not joined. There may be plenty of reasons. There may be many other reasons. They don't like to have tea. They don't like to sit at one place, social distancing or whatever, or they don't want to be a part of this club, whatever the reason might be. But what the message the other 18 people carry and they discuss about is that they don't want to be a member of this club because they don't consider us to be their good friends. They are not our good friends. Means it is a tea club. Let it be separated only up to tea now. Why? Or maybe they don't want to pay that joining fee as well. That might also be one of the reasons. But uh, and they consider that all those who have joined this club are the best friends, which may not be the case. Many of them would join कि जाने दो यार अभी क्या मना करना है इनको join कर लेते हैं. If everybody is joining, then we also join it. So what is what appears in front of us, that is not the whole truth. By the way, uh, the whole work of Adam Smith, the economist from UK, he if his work is to be uh, tagged in one single line, it says that the betterment of the components leads to the betterment of the whole, the betterment of the system. And the work of John Nash is sometimes asserted in a single line as the betterment of the components does not necessarily lead to the betterment of the whole. Okay, and this sentence energy says the betterment of the components will never lead to the betterment of the whole. The components, or maybe not to that extent. The whole may also be getting better, but not to that extent as the individual components get on or take advantage of this. Uh, now I would like this discussion to be open for else if Kalani wants to say anything to add to it. And before that, let me check this. Ibrahim Faj is saying, I think this is because it's easy to measure and judge on obvious things, like when one is standing or not while paying taxes is gateway, but it isn't to measure and form a judgment on. From what I understand, we have decided on quick ways of forming judgment. One thing, very two observation, Ibrahim ji. But apart from having quick way, it's there is one more thing I would like to add here. It's a uniform way, and it's the easy way because I tell you one thing. Suppose I have to select the best student of the class. The example which Kalyani gave at the start, to visit the Ayuka. Okay, so if the best way was that to make those students, that SOP thing is just to minimize this. SOP means statement of purpose, which we have to write for getting admissions to some premier institutes. That why do we want to study this course or study at this place? That is, I consider one way to avoid this, say, anti-synergy. So one way to select the 45 students for Ayuka visit was that make all the 300 students of the school to write the letter, to write a statement of purpose type thing, that why do we want to visit the Ayuka and why should you be allowed to visit, irrespective of whether that person has scored any marks in science or he has scored a big zero. But then the problem would have come. Easy method, yes, I agree, Benji. But one way is that apart from easy method and quick method, is that the evaluator who is going to evaluate those 300 students ke SOP, that himself, that evaluator himself or herself should have a be adept and should have a concrete knowledge on what Ayuka is all about and what the student is trying to say from this purpose of visit which he has mentioned. But if it has to be sorted out on the basis of marks now, then any Tom, Dick and Harry can select those 45 students who knows that which number is greater than the other number. So that is one way because of which this anti-synergy exists. And the best would have been that let all these students, 300 students, speak for 5 minutes or 10 minutes about why do they want to go to that premier institute for a visit, and then on the basis of that we select them. But again, we would have made many criteria that the student which has been so fluent in the speech, the student which has proper desk job. If we go on those things, then again the anti-synergy will come in. So these are the reasons why And the main reason is that we want to measure their interest in science, their interest in visiting that institute. We want to measure it, so anti-synergy comes in. With what methodology we are going to measure, that is not that much important. As long as we are measuring it in objective terms, that anti-synergy would come. It is like this, like bureaucracy of a country, best components, poor machinery. We may say it like that. Anyways, Kalyani, you want to say something?
Well, I don't have much to add that way, but I would like to just sum up what we were just saying, that uh, the whole idea of synergy is that the value of the whole is greater than summation of the parts. I mean, that is the simplest definition of synergy. And if you look at what is happening in the actual working of any system, you find that the system has its own goals, every individual components have their own goals, and in the pursuit of these goals, there is some evaluation mechanism which is put in place to see to what extent these goals have been achieved. And this brings about a misalignment in the goals of the components vis-a-vis the goals of the system. And therefore, we end up in a situation where all individual components are achieving their goals. The students are getting good marks, teachers are getting a good student feedback, researchers are getting research papers published, educational institutions are creating an impression that they are the gateway to an IIT. And policymakers are able to show that we have achieved greater levels of literacy rates and gross enrollment ratios. So effectively, all individual components are able to achieve their goals in terms of the objective parameters. But what happens to the system as a whole? So here is the situation where the components are benefiting, and I would go to the extent of saying that the individual components are actually benefiting at the expense of the system. So, effectively, the value of the whole, which is the system, is actually lesser than the benefits which are being derived by the components of the system. So, that is the whole genesis of this concept of anti-synergy, that because synergy says value of whole is greater than summation of the parts, and to observe in the actual working of any system, you find that individual components are actually benefiting at the expense of the system. So that's how we thought of terming it as anti-synergy. And it is so evident, it is just there for everyone to see. Anyways, I think the monologue doesn't sound too good, so would like to hear your thoughts, all of you, on what you think about, or have you gone through any experience which you would like to share, which you think you can relate to this concept of anti-synergy? Yeah, over to all of you, Vincent.
You were speaking about, whenever we try to measure a subjective this quality with an objective parameter. Am I right? And that is what you said, right?
That is true.
Hello?
That is the process of anti-synergy set in motion.
Yes. So what if we come up with a system? I was thinking, what if we come up with a system? We have a subjective test to, for testing the this parameter. What if the test is not objective, it is subjective?
Okay.
So what do you think will happen then?
I just have one point to make, To be honest, what I feel, maybe you can differ with me on this, but what I feel is anti-synergy is something which is such an inherent part of any system that involves subjective variables that you can't actually do away with it. Okay, like for example, if we just go back to that whole Ayuka issue, instead of the top scorers of science, instead of that you make people write an SOP. How would SOP again? That will again require something like there will have to be some criteria again, right? Language, content, expression of ideas, or research about Ayuka. There will again be some criteria or the other, So those let's say, have some edge over the others in terms of language for whatever reason, are bound
Yes,
to do better. So I personally think this whole phenomenon of anti-synergy is so inherent that it can't really be done away with. I mean, that is my personal opinion. I don't want to sound too negative. You can differ with me on that, but that
yes,
is
yes.
what.
It's something
Yeah.
like friction, one may say.
Or maybe some student who is very good at science and interested in visiting the institute, but he is not very good at expressing himself, or expressing his interest about it, or he is not very good at choosing the words, and he is not having a good command over the language. But many students who come from vernacular background, they are not able to score very well in first year just because the question paper is in English. That's all. English, and they have to write in English. So the moment we are going to measure them, maybe right through that mode of SOP as well, some other students might be advantage in an advantageous position, but uh, there would be some not or the other. Like this, what we feel.
Okay. Okay.
Let's just say,
One more thing is there.
sorry,
If you want to-
yeah, Manish, please continue.
Yeah, it just reminds me of another very classic idea put forth by an economist. He was, in fact, a physicist turned an economist who's also a Nobel laureate, Tinberger, who made this fantastic statement. That sometimes we just end up measuring something because it is measurable. Okay. Uh,
I'm sorry, she has misquoted. It's not Tinberger. It's the Nobel laureate of 1972 or 1975. That is actually, I have mentioned him as a reference in one of my articles, whose link Dushyant has given earlier today. He has said that most of the times, just in our race of trying to measure something, we end up measuring something which is not in any way related with that study, but we measure it just because that is the only thing which we can measure. Just made something कुछ यही बोल रहे थे.
yeah, and exactly. We just end up measuring something which is just because it's measurable, even though it is not related to.
His name is Von Augustus, something like that. That is available as a reference in the link of the article which Dushyant has given today morning. So you may check that article. I have come across this statement in his Nobel lecture, which was available on the nobelprize.org website. So, and that is very true. Most of the time, sometimes we end up measuring something just because that is the only thing which we can measure. And that is nowhere related, but somehow we fit that relation. And it is not what I am saying. It is said by Nobel laureate in 1975. Maybe I am trying to say that if I am saying that is less important, if a Nobel laureate is saying pay more importance to his words and behave in an anti-synergetic way. And do you know about one more very classic case of this anti-synergy? You have heard about the physics Nobel laureate of 2018, Donna Strickland. Have you heard about her? She has got Nobel Prize for the studies in lasers and all, quantum and something. In 2018, before, when people started looking for her at Wikipedia, there was no Wikipedia page. She said that she has requested Wikipedia to get a Wikipedia page or something, but she was denied, saying that her research was not significant enough. And 2.5 hours after the declaration of the Nobel Prize, announcement of the Nobel Prize, she was found, and her research was found significant enough to be available on Wikipedia. Why do you think that Wikipedia has given her research that much significance to have a Wikipedia page? I believe it was just because she was awarded a Nobel Prize 2.5 hours back. In 2018, October, it has happened. That was in the news also. If you Google her name, 2018 Nobel Prize Donna Strickland, and you will get to know it. She has said it in an interview as well. Anyways, Dushyant, you were saying something.
Yeah, I just mean to say that this thing is basically, as you're saying, inevitable, like something like a friction, you may say. So we can at max try to minimize that. And so I believe the first step to this is, see, you want to minimize friction, but the first step is probably that you should first acknowledge that friction exists in the first place, right? So the same thing we can do here is like we need to see that something is not right. We need to notice that there is some anti synergy, which is why coining a term and stuff like that, and really realizing and recognizing the problem is really necessary in the first place. So once we recognize that, then we can try to minimize the friction. Like let's say, like we try to make it more aerodynamically suitable, and we try to polish them as much as we can. Similarly, we can try other things so that we could minimize this thing and reduce this inevitable thing. That's all. Not to eliminate this, but at least to reduce this. And for doing so, we'll probably need to first acknowledge that first, because once we acknowledge that, we will think of ways to overcome that. Let's say, once you said this school thing. So if we actually realize the issue, we may now be able to convince the government that we actually need more teachers, we actually need more appropriate teachers who can uh, act responsibly. And since it also requires a lot of personal attention, the student teacher ratio should be brought down, and many other things should be done, like basically, like it's trying to make the measurement parameter as subjective as possible, as subjective as we can. But it at the end of the day, it will still be some objective parameter, but still we can try to make it as subjective by making the measuring process a multifaceted thing. We can make it a multi-dimensional measurement that we have. But of course, a subjective thing has infinite dimensions, but we can increase the dimensions of this objective measurement as many by as many degrees as we can, and we can get to some sort of a better measuring system, which can maybe further refined, and whenever the new revised model or updated version is coming up. So that I believe.
Uh, yeah, Dushyant, that is a very good point. Actually, I while you were speaking, your point, I got an idea about what you was about that. What was the name of the factory? I forgot. Uh, so can anyone please tell me the name of the factory? Hello.
Quota factory. Okay, that's it.
No, no. The eighth standard story.
That's not a
The
factory.
fact.
Ayuka is a astronomy institute, research institute. Ayuka is the name.
Okay,
That's one of
Ayuka.
the best
Okay, sorry.
country.
So
Nothing but
Ayuka, yeah, for the Ayuka test. So what if uh, everybody? You said that you suggested a process in which everybody has to write a SOP, or everybody has to give a speech, or everybody has to score this marks. So what if we can come up with a system where people who are good at language, only those people will will be given a test of speaking. People who are good at writing, we will give them a test for SOPs. What if everybody, every child, every student has to give a different exam?
How will you
So
standardize that? How about the difficulty levels of each? How will you standardize that?
yes, that is a problem. I accept
Also,
that. That is a
also then you can't then compare one branch student from the other branch student. Then like you can't compare the student who's good at writing to the student who's good at speaking. Like,
just to add, I'll be reading out some chats. There is something Ibrahim Arafat was saying. This is the most interesting idea I've come across in recent time. Is there a website or some place where I can read and learn more about this topic? Ibrahim, the only source you can learn about this is from Manish, because himself he coined this term anti-synergy. Synergy is a known term, but I believe that's the only literature that we have so far, and I believe this can be quite a big thing in future, and I really hope it does. And Aditya Gori was saying, is there or should there be an anti-synergetic quotient implied in lower this implied to lower this effect over many subjects, for example, visiting guidance of your interview. And also Al Chagore has said, also, is there another singular way of reducing anti-synergy than personal interviews? I guess that's what here Tanmay was trying to say. And Ibrahim against, we should probably make a website and collect the aggregate stories, ideas, and articles. Interesting idea, Ibrahim. Yeah, maybe we can do that. Keshav, yeah, please unmute yourself. If you want to say something, please.
Hi, actually, I want, as ma'am has explained, that the evaluation process is a bit messy for those things. So for that, I have one thing. Recently, there have been various reports that the engineering students of our college are not employable. 80% of them are not employable. That they
Right.
don't deserve the work of a clerk also, equivalent to a clerk. I do not want to defame that profession. It is also a profession, but I want to give an example that after getting graduated, if someone can't do even the work of a clerk, that is misery for everyone. So for that, it is. Don't you think so that it is our system responsible for that? Because in all the practical subjects, also they are giving us just written work. Give this written examination. They do not ask for a practical. They never ask for it. So instead, and one point Mr. Dushyant has pointed out that we need more good teachers. But how we can have the good teachers? Because since 80% are useless, out of that 20%, many of them, the rest of that 20% is handling the main portion of GDP and the other technical and core sectors. Then who will come up? A very few of them come to the teaching section, and because of that, we are not having enough that much number of good teachers. So what we can do? We can change the curriculum. We can make it more practical approachable, that the subject which is relevant to that theory part, or it can be sorted out to theory, we have to do that. And the subject which should be practical based, we should go it after the practicals.
Okay,
I wanted to say something in queue of Keshav's point, if I might add.
Yes,
Yeah, please
please.
go ahead.
I wanted to say practicals is what comes up to our mind immediately when we say, no, don't take objective questions, don't take subjective questions. Okay, but who is going to show you the practical? There should be someone who's skilled in it. And what if we don't have them either? How will you make sure that the practical is conducted in an authentic manner?
Yes. For that,
in engineering, a lot of teaching, they said about a lot of teachers that they are the industry rejected persons who actually end up teaching in engineering colleges. I mean, I guess most of you must be from an engineering background. So that is the general perception which, which a layperson has, that very few teachers in engineering actually come there with out of their choice. Most of them look out for jobs in the industry, and because they don't end up finding good jobs in the industry, that's how they end up into academics. That's a general perception. Again, I could be wrong. That's a perception which I have heard a lot of people say. And I'd like to just make a couple of quick points, before I allow you to, get back into the discussion. Uh, See, like I said, anti-synergy is something which I don't think can be completely done away with. We can try to minimize it, but again, I would like to, I mean, this is my view, that over a period of time, anti-synergy will creep back into the system. It's a quasi-static process, and you'll be able to find out that something like this has happened only over a period of time. Because just imagine what would happen, like, suppose we make a fresh start and everyone is supposed to behave ideally. What happens to someone who's not as efficient as someone else? They're going to end up using suboptimal means to achieve their goals. Like, I may be a student who studies from a very good reference book before going for an exam. Some other student may not be able to either have access or have the patience or have the aptitude to actually read a good reference book. So I'll end up reading a Pragati and write my exam. And if both of us end up scoring the same number of marks in the exam, which is your evaluation mechanism, then what's the point of actually, reading a 800-page reference book when I can actually get the same marks and do the same job with reading an 80-page ka pragati. So over a period of time, it's because of the suboptimal methods which the components of the system will use to achieve their goals that even efficient components are compelled to start using the same suboptimal methods. And that is how anti-synergy will keep creeping into the system, and it's a matter of degree. Over a period of time, you'll find the extent of anti-synergy actually increasing into the system, which is what actually dilutes the foundation of the system. Also, this idea about those who are those who would prefer to give a reading test or a writing test or a writing or speaking test, I think. And there was a very good point put out there, that how do we standardize it? How do we compare it? That is exactly where anti-synergy comes in. And that is why it is something which cannot be done away with.
Ma'am and sir, I have one thing to ask. Basically, we are up with this term, but how we will give publicize it, that how we will present it to the masses, that this thing is there, it occurs, and it is the main reason behind all of the maximum failures and the problems. Because on a broader perspective, it is the anti-synergy which is the thing which summarizes all maximum number of problems that we are facing right now as
I
a country, as an individual, as an organization.
See, I totally agree with you. I personally believe that it is actually anti-synergy, and because, like I said, it's a matter of degree, and the extent of anti-synergy goes increasing in a quasi-static manner over a period of time. So it is my personal opinion that that is what actually does the undoing of any system. I mean, ultimately, if a system value falls, or ultimately if a system collapses, it is the manifestation of the greatest degree of anti-synergy. That is what is my personal opinion. And yeah, I mean, I just remembered I wanted to say something when I think Keshav was talking about how engineers are not employable. See, I work in a bank, and I mean, again, I don't want to demean anyone, but I have students from a very well-known engineering college who come to open their accounts, or pay their fees in the account of the college, which is held by our bank, and they don't know how to fill in a deposit slip. Okay, now of course this
It's
is
not the college Manish teaches.
Reference
well,
finish.
I don't want anyone filing a defamation case against me that I'm defaming the institution or something. But but yeah, it is actually a little surprising for me, because it's not even something which is very technical language, or there's a lot of technical jargon involved in it. There are simple terms: account number, name, mobile number. That's all, and you're not able to fill in that deposit slip. I mean, I really look at them, and I in fact. Tell Manish, that let me know where these kids of yours are building bridges or constructing. I would never want to cross that bridge. Anyways, I mean, jokes apart, not against anyone, because it's actually the fault of the system, because we're churning out, not. It's completely going in the wrong direction. I mean, the cycle is going on, but it's going on exactly in the wrong direction. That's what I feel.
Ma'am, pardon me, but sorry, but I want to put a one good example in front of you. Near my house, some 500 meters away, India's most long-lived, to be long-lived highway is getting constructed. NS3 between between Mumbai to Agra,
Okay.
connecting Delhi also.
Mm-hmm.
So it is supposed to be live more than 150 years. It is to be made so. For
Okay.
that, they have given us many underpasses to connect the city and the villages. In
Mm-hmm.
all those underpasses, in maximum, in the smaller underpasses, they have elevated the area behind underneath the underpass, so water doesn't stack there and damage the entire foundation of the bridge flyover. But in the biggest, in the main underpass, which is the most busiest, maximum traffic goes from there and above there. They have dug it deep by 1 meter, 1 meter deep. Sorry, not 1 meter, half a meter. And because of that, in each and every year, in the smallest amount precipitation occurs, all of the water of the nearby area just gets stagnant. And because of that, that entire place during its construction has collapsed. It was headlines of our nation, and after that also it has collapsed twice. Now you see, that type of engineers comes and do this thing, and because of that 150 people died.
Oh, okay, that's really unfortunate, but again, to be honest, we must put our heads together to actually think about, was it entirely and exclusively only the fault of the engineers? So,
Yeah, there might be
Ma'am, even
bureaucratic
a
reasons.
laborer working there could understand that, yeah, we are keeping it too much deep. We should fill it up, otherwise the water will stack there. But how they can do such a stupid? Even being myself, being an IT engineer, can point out this thing. But being a civil engineer and working in that National Highway Authority, they don't have that much brain to do this thing. It's really pathetic.
no, so maybe they use like really suboptimal methods to get into that position.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. That could be a case. Yeah.
Anyways, Keshav, I think Keshav has mentioned one point that about syllabus revision and what is required that is not taught and something like that. I think Keshav has pointed it out some time back. On that aspect, that way he was saying to reduce the anti-synergy and this. It's up to us, Keshav. I know about one institute. Mainly, I'm talking about this BHU, Banaras Hindu University, where it was, of course, everything was a type of autonomous. You may say that when the say demand of the industry was changing, and when it used to change, so after every 3 4 years 5 years the faculties used to sit in a classroom and they decide upon this particular thing is not required for the students, and now this new thing we will teach them, and then they come up with the new aspects of the syllabus. Primarily, they were doing it because they were not reluctant to learn new things themselves, because they will have to take extra care. They will have to maybe, if some faculty was using class notes, so whatever class notes he was using last year, that won't be applicable next year. But he was willing to go that to go through all this, and he was willing to do all the exercise by himself first, and then the same thing with some other institute. I will not name the institute, uh, and will request others also not to name if they are able to identify that. The institute became autonomous. Okay, syllabus was to be changed, and then there was a criteria for being autonomous, that this second institute which I am talking about now, that you have to change the syllabus by at least 30 to 40%, because if you don't change by at least 40%, then what's the new thing which you are teaching under autonomous agile? So for the sake of that, they changed it. Some here and there, mostly they tried to change only the nomenclature, because the faculties don't want to take that extra effort of preparing the topic themselves, because they have to prepare the topic themselves now before they go to classes. So they just change the nomenclature if they have added some extra thing. So now comes the most exciting part of the story, that after 3 years, again the syllabus revision should be there for autonomous institutes, because if you have not revised your syllabus again after the 3 years, then you have become stagnant, it is presumed. So to show that I am not stagnant and I am changing my syllabus again after 3 years, they came again to the earlier syllabus. So it's like walking from 1 to 5 and saying that I am active, and again walking from 5 to 1 and saying I am active, again walking 1 to 5 and 5 to 1. So they are just like oscillating. So this is also what people can do, and they have qualified under that criteria of change of 40% of syllabus, because in year A they change the nomenclature and they change something chota mota thing, so that even if you don't ask those things in the exam, because under autonomous exam we have to prepare only question papers, so even if you don't ask those things, then also it's okay. ऐसे समझ के if faculties make some 40% का change, again after 3 years they go back to the, so if you see their syllabus after 6 years, sorry, after 3 years, and what the earlier they were having before being autonomous, that is entirely identical. It is entirely identical. But they have qualified in the first year as well, saying that we have changed 40%, and after 3 years again they have got a very huge pat on their back. Ki, wow, well done, you have again changed your syllabus. So we are continuously improving. We are continuously improving. This improving is sarcastic, huh? They have changed it on both the occasions by 40%, 40%. But in effect, what happened that they have changed. They have never changed it. They have changed it very slightly, the nomenclature and the terms in the at the time of the being autonomous, and again after 3 years they have not come back to square one. And maybe again after 3 years they will again change it and go. So it is like having two boats, jumping from one boat to the second boat, and then from second boat to the first boat, and saying that we are continuously evolving. What evolving? So these are the ways how people take advantage of anti-synergy.
Right. I would like to add a few more examples. Before that, I think Aditya Gore like just mentioned that he want to say something in the chat.
Yes, please, Aditya
Yeah,
Garuji.
hello. As everybody was mentioning that we should be publicizing and making people aware about this anti-synergy phenomena, and as everybody was so keen that I thought of something, I also put it in the comments, but I would like to clarify it further, because if this anti-synergy is not put into statistical terms or quotient, then this would be just a literature, or is it that it has been put into some quotient or statistical terms that you can count the anti-synergy, or is it just a piece of literature or a thought process or just a word given to this widely happening phenomena? I do not know that. So firstly, I would like to know that. Yeah.
Even just trying to quantify anti-synergy is very difficult.
Yeah, that really seems difficult.
That is like there is a pin drop silence, and you say silence, and silence breaks.
Yeah, but what I thought was, if we take the most efficient form, which reduces the synergy. So far, I thought of an PI, personal interview, because when you take a PI, it stands for like 20, 30, 40 minutes, assuming that there's no barrier in language. I mean, in the same state, you can talk about Marathi, Hindi, Tamil, Telugu, whatever. So there's essentially no language barrier. And you can know a person easily, judge a person, a sane person can judge another person in like 20, 30 minutes conversation with much ease. So there's that. And if you know the exact knowledge of the person, even vaguely, you can term it into some statistical terms, right? Like you can put a question like out of 10, he's got like 7 or 8. And then you can compare it with the scores. I mean, if there's another way of knowing synergy, anti-synergy better, this is it. Or if there is another way of efficiently measuring the actual knowledge of the person, then personal interview, it would be great to add that as well. I mean, what are your thoughts about this? This is the nascent idea I had in my mind just a few minutes ago.
I think that's a good idea. To just point out, honestly, this this concept was coined by Manish, and the literature available on it so far is, I think, very limited. There was just one, there's just one presentation that was made at the University of Oxford way back in 2013, and that thereafter there has actually been some very ad hoc kind of work that has been happening, in the sense there is a structure of a book that Manish is trying to write, in which he does talk about the hierarchy and anti-synergy being a matter of degree. Like, to just put it in perspective, since we had a very elaborate discussion about the education system, every individual component is acting in an anti-synergetic manner, but the impact of, let's say, a policy maker acting in an anti-synergetic manner, the impact of that on the system would be much greater than an individual student maybe acting in an anti-synergetic manner, or maybe an individual educational institution doing so. But if you have a policy maker, or if you have a regulator like the UGC or someone acting in an anti-synergetic manner, its impact would be much greater. So there would be probably ways of measuring in terms of a matter of degree, that what would be greater or smaller. But I think trying to quantify that would I think be the would again bring us back to square one. And another concept is that of vertical or horizontal hierarchy, which I mean, there's a lot of work still to be done on that. So yeah, I mean, all your ideas are really welcome, because that would be a great value addition to the work.
I mean, I looked through this EQ and SQ, the emotional quotient and spiritual quotient. I was going through the tests that there's an agency in Pune, I think, called Anand Agencies, and they have this test made by different researchers, probably a couple of researchers, lots of years ago. So and it's just a simple questionnaire. I mean, people, I know they can be rigged, they can be falsified, the records can be broken, yeah. But at least there's a test which determines your spiritual quotient or your emotional quotient. There are so many tests in psychology, even if they're not so efficient, but yes, they are used on some scale. Even I would like to quote that my mother in her PhD used the test of spiritual quotient, and at a level, it worked well. It worked very fine. If the records and if the test was filled by so-called sincere students, and it was supervised very well, the test can give satisfactory result rather than not making the question at all. I mean, how can you measure spirituality? It is an impossible task. But there is this test for the spiritual question and emotional question. So that felt great. So I thought it would be a great idea to apply this to anti-synergy. I mean, after all, it is an individual perspective, right? Coming back to it is an yes, talking about UGC system, let's talk about a government. I mean, if you take a government, assume that we take happiness index of India, which stands pretty low as of now, probably at 129 to something, and then we survey people about how well do they think demographically. So that is how it could be measured, right? How can we bridge the gap, and how much is actually the happiness amongst people, and what are the parameters they are using to measure this? Is there some kind of anti-synergy in this surveys or Pew Research surveys or anything? Just an idea after all.
That's an idea that we would like to look at, in the sense, I mean, I don't think I have much to say about it as of now, because even I need to give it a thought, because that is something honestly we have never thought about, because that is primarily the whole crux of the problem. That's what I think, trying to quantify. But yeah, I think we would definitely like to think over it, and I'd like to get back to you on that.
Yeah, sure thing, no problem. Thank you very much.
There was a discussion. There was a discussion about how prolific a scientist is by rating them or giving them a particular index, and in that index, the number of papers published by them was taken as a parameter. Instead of that, if you take some other parameter like the number of citations, like how many other scientists use this paper, wouldn't that be a better parameter to cope up with the problem of anti-Semitism?
That is a parameter, I think.
Is
That
it?
is used by most places. Yeah.
I would request the views of other participants as well. But before that, I would like to mention just two things. One is that how many of you have watched the movie E is equal to MC Square? E is equal to MC Square. That is a movie available on YouTube about the Einstein's work and all those things, Eddington and all those. Uh, uh, Anyone of you have watched that movie? Even if
sir.
you have, even
Not
if you
yet.
have not yet. Okay, okay. So that is a homework. Go and watch that movie tonight. Okay. Anyway, so uh, in the Einstein's paper of 1905, you know about the references. Which references did he use? How many references were there? Any idea? Anyone of you have ever come across that? How many
Maybe
references?
two.
1905. In 1905, Einstein has mentioned three papers, now, which today are known as general theory of relativity. So how many
Zero.
offenses? Zero offenses, yes. There were not any offenses. And today, what is the one of the criteria of measuring any research paper, or whether it is good or not? That which offenses did he use? Did he use any? If today Einstein would have written that paper now, or in that day also, he didn't get much attention at the very moment of that paper, because there were no offenses. So people might have thought that this person has not done any literature survey. They were exactly the same as this person has not done any literature survey. Do you know why, if you apply for a credit card or if you apply for a loan, there is something known as CIBIL score. There is something known as CIBIL, CIBIL. What is the full name? I don't know. Kalyani might be knowing. But CIBIL score, your CIBIL score must be between this and this. But if there is a person who goes to apply for a credit card who has not taken any loan earlier, that CIBIL score measures that how prompt you were in paying your earlier debt. But if you have not taken any loan earlier, they pay a lot of difficulties, these banks, saying that your civil score is not generated. We don't know how good you are at paying loans, because Baba, he has not taken any loan earlier. So similarly, if there are no offenses, so there is no way of knowing that whether you have done any literature survey or not. But the thing is, it's quite possible, just as it was in the case of Einstein's paper, that no literature was available beforehand, and it's a totally new theory. So there was no references of bibliography. At the same time, I want to say one more thing. There was an article in the Nature, in the journal Nature. That article is also mentioned in that online article of mine, whose link Dushyant has given on the group today morning, about that endosynergy article. In that article, I have mentioned 5 or 6 references. In that, one reference was that also. In that, there was a news about a group of Japan. Okay, there were 2 groups who were having a pseudo-referencing style. Pseudo-referencing style means, just like you say it works this way, it was working in some this way. Let's suppose I have a lab and I'm an established researcher, and I'm having 5 or 10 students, and working on 2, 3 areas. And there is another friend of mine in some other place, at some other place. He is also having a lab and some people working in some closely related areas. And we both of us have having a tacit agreement that I will mention all of his resources, because mentioning yourself as a citation doesn't work now. That isn't counted. So I will mention him, cite his papers, and he will cite my papers. Or maybe if 2 people are there, that can be easily identified. So what about if we are having 10 such gangs of gangsters? I would say that I cite the number 2 cites number 3 wala person ko, number 3 wala person cites number 4, and number 4 cites number 1. So it is a chain of say gangsters working in this fashion, that everybody is citing one another and everything is going on smoothly. It's like as long as the chain of people in any office are taking bribes and work is going on, files are passed, we presume that everything is going on smoothly. But everybody is hand in hand with the other. So that is also one way in which citation or a thing can be exploited. And it was exploited. It was reported in Nature journal and 1 or 2 people of some other country were involved in that. So that is also something.
Actually, I read that someone who is like pioneer or something, someone who has most citations, and he was one of the most reputed people in the particular field. I think biology is
Yes,
something, but
yes,
he
it
was
was
caught with this thing because he
the
was
the detail,
coercing people
the
to
det-
cite his papers.
and the detail and other offences are mentioned in that article, which the link you have submitted today morning.
Oh, right,
Uh,
right, right.
that is there. And
And yeah, one
one,
more thing to yeah, please
yes,
carry on.
yes, yes. Please continue.
No, no, I just want to add more examples like that I've
Yes,
come
yes,
across recently.
please.
Basically, we do have this heard of this TRP scam that's coming up,
Yeah, please, scams.
and
Yes,
yeah,
exactly.
because
That is a
that's
very,
basically
very
because
correct example.
uh, the amount of information is not measured, but the amount of people viewing that is measured.
For
So
the number
basically,
of crores.
yeah, that's something they're trying to rig and rig the game and gamify that. And another thing is basically you see clickbaitiness in YouTube. That's again because YouTube rewards you for getting more number of views and getting more people hooked. So even if they have a news piece, they could reveal it in the first few seconds. They won't, just because they want to increase the viewing time. So they'll just keep you on the hook for a really long time, and then in the mid somewhere they'll let you know that this is the actual thing. So they try to like prolong it, which is actually working against the principle of making efficient use of someone's time. And even same goes for advertising and stuff, where people look for very simple things, like publicizing is has become the main agenda of a lot of organizations, because that's all that matters to a large extent in the current scenario. Yeah, I mean, there are many more examples. Maybe you can just look around and then you can find a lot more of them.
For that matter, if you go for seeking examples now, if any of we participants who are right now attending the talk has participated in this talk just because they have seen on the poster that this talk or this theory was discussed at Oxford University, and that's why I will attend this talk. So that participant is also an example of anti-synergy.
Until now we have discussed about anti-synergy in a bad or a negative way, that it leads to bad quality, but it's not always true. Like the herd mentality leads to bad quality, but suppose in the private sector there is competition, and if one mobile company sells a phone for which has 10 features, the other one would want to sell a phone at the same price with 15 features, so the herd will go there, and some other company will also want to sell a phone at the same price but with 20 features. So this competition in the private sector plus the herd mentality actually gives you better quality.
Right.
Another example of this is
Sorry,
the
just
Apollo
to add,
mission. Yeah.
the 48 MP camera, mobile camera that we are seeing is a product of this same example that you have
Yeah,
cited.
and another
Because
example is the Apollo mission. That because USSR was involved in sending missiles into space, therefore the US had to go in that. Otherwise, they wouldn't have spent so much money on sending someone to the moon.
Uh,
I have something to add upon.
yes,
Please allow me. First thing for that mobile one, what you say looks good from the outer crust, but when we go inside, we will see that all of that competition and all of those things were full of gimmicks. They are just exploiting the consumers' money. They are just pushing them to have a to even put out more money on some things which are, if we see them with a logical way, they are useless. What I will do with four cameras when two of them are not working and one is just 8 megapixel, compare 48 megapixel camera with just 8 megapixel wide angle. But it is the world's most idiotic thing I can ever say. See, that the company is launching a 24,000 rupee phone having two megapixel camera. That is pathetic. The logic are destroyed like that Sutli bomb has been planted behind them. Literally.
Which company
And
is that?
all companies, they are just idiot. Just
Especially
one
like
LG.
iPhone does that, right? Like
No,
every new.
iPhone work is genuine. Their 12 megapixel 1212, that is genuine. That's why that phone is leading the market. The Samsung did the same. That's why their flagship phones are leading the market. Though they are that much costly, still people are buying it. They are true ones. They deserve their prices.
But with every new
But
edition, is the iPhone really worth? Like how much improved is the iPhone 11 from the previous one or the next one?
Yeah, when we see this comparison for 11 and 12, yeah, it doesn't sound that much good, and that's why their price are relatively same. Somewhat they are relatively same. The second thing I want, this mainly prevails in the mid range and that lower up friends. Another thing I just forgot to mention what I was saying. Okay, one thing, Mr. Manish, sorry, I have one bit suggestion because the theory for
Yes, please.
anti-synergy looks very much similar to the one that was proposed by the economics Nobel laureate who got the Nobel Prize this year for their bidding process in government tenders.
If it is like that, then I missed that Nobel Prize.
Uh, sorry, sorry, that it might be my mistake. I might have read wrong.
No, I have not gone through the work of that person whom you are saying that has won the Nobel Prize in economics. I will go through it, and then I would be in a better position to say anything about it. But one thing I want to mention, which I think Shanawaz ji was saying, or who was saying right now, that these all talk was about the negativity of anti-synergy. I want to say that it's not about negativity of anti-synergy. We are not calling anti-synergy as negative thing. We are calling anti-synergy as a limitation. Limitation. Nothing like positive or negative. In fact, the detailed structure mein, there is one section about the positive things of anti-synergy as well. But this is about limitation of any measurement where you have measured a subjective thing in objective manners. It's not that anti-synergy is something negative. It's about that anti-synergy is a limitation. And about that Nobel Prize of Economics of this year, I will go through it.
Yes, sir. Sir, I was saying that the concept of anti-synergy is what it is just general. We see it in our daily life, but we didn't compile it in a single term. We all saw this thing. We all have the experience with this thing. We all know this thing, but we didn't compile it in a proper formatted way. The same thing happened with the those I will add so-called Nobel nutrients for government bidding. They propose the idea of tenders, giving the tender so the minimum bidder will get the tender. That entire setup was given by some economist of America, and which indirectly they told that it will be boon for the developing countries, but it become their worst thing for the main reason of corruption. Apart from going that, if we see both the things from their crust, they look similar. That these things are present, we use them, we face them, but when they are compiled in a single form, they are used extensively. So, like the same way, if you are able to compile the anti synergy in a proper format, and that you have done already, but much better, that is understandable in high level of hierarchies of power, then it may provide a proper solution to the problems without hurting their interest, because they will adopt only on that thing that will suit them, their interest. They are not bothered about us. Have you got my point? I think so. I've made it too much complicated.
No, no, no. I totally got it. I just one thing that I didn't appreciate, which was the cynicism at the end of it, that they are not bothered about us. Actually, nobody is bothered about anyone. To be honest.
Yeah.
See,
When someone says take care of yourself, there is a tacit next line also, because nobody else will take care of you. Take care of yourself because nobody else
nobody
will
else
do
is
it
going
for
to do
you.
it for you. No, but what you're saying is true, that this concept, because it is so widely prevalent, it is so rampant, so evident, and it is found across all systems. It's omnipresent. Yeah, it's omnipresent, and there'll be exceptions to it, but exceptions are so rare and so difficult to find that you rather talk to them about getting your job done with the more generic things. So yeah, you're right. That probably needs to be compiled better, and Yeah, it is in the process, Manish says, but he's not done it in 7 years. So if if someone of you can motivate him to do it at least in the next 7 years, so that he doesn't miss the Nobel Prize after 30 years, that would be.
No, ma'am. Actually, I want to say because before I entered in the mid and I typed on Google anti-synergy, and what I got the results as synonyms of synergy, the opposite of synergy, word figurative archives, synergy. They are explaining that of chemistry, not that the in which category it falls in
No,
philosophy
that is
or.
true. That is true because even I have done that. I've googled it once, and that those are the results that you get. This presentation at Oxford, or the paper that was submitted, or any work on it is actually still to come out and get the attention that I believe it deserves.
Because ma'am, after going to 5 pages also, I didn't found a single thing about this. So that's why.
Yeah, so I would suggest you for the time being, like Google anti-synergy and Manish Kare. That does the job for me. That's what I do every time I need to look up this article and give it to someone. Like that's what I do. That will usually lead me to the Nature article of his. Uh, yeah, I mean just for the time being, like if you lose your
So
link somewhere.
it's high time Manish understands that his name is getting associated with anti-synergy. So he might as well get his act together now.
Yeah, I really hope so. And by
I
the way, like, is this does this just a second, Shanwas? Does this come under behavioral science? Because like, if you could collaborate with some of those people, maybe.
Actually, Nature Evolution Group has many journals of different streams, and they had come up with the Nature Human Behavior (NHP). That was the name of the journal who was inviting the entries, and so it was published on the Nature Human Behavior blog post like that.
So
So
could you try
it may come
contact
under
them?
behavioral science. Yes, I think yes, perfectly. It would come under behavioral sciences only because it is our behavior now to adopt to antisynergetic modes.
So yeah, maybe if you could like just an idea that if you could like reach out to Indian scientists who are working on that, that might help. And Shanawaz, you were saying something? Yeah, please. Shanawaz? Okay, it's internet issues, I guess.
Mr. Manish, I may be asking this a very personal question. Do you reside do you live in India or outside of India?
In India.
In India, near Madhya Pradesh, or because actually the concept for anti-synergy, it will be definitely loved by a director of my institute, and he will really, from his side, I'm saying that he will really love to have you as a guest or as a keynote speaker in our various events. So it will be, I think, so good platform also for you to put this idea in front of a wide category of. What I say, audience who are able to understand, who are getting this something, or who doesn't get this thing.
Uh, uh, I'm leaving
Would you
my.
like to?
Yes, I would more than like it. I'm leaving my email ID here in the chat box, and we can talk on it further.
Yes.
Is
Thank you
that
very much,
okay?
sir. Yes, sir. That will be great.
Okay, okay. And any further
Hello,
notes?
sir. When
Yes.
I looked for your profile on this Nature blog, I also saw something like theory of gifted goods. So, what was that small paragraph? About
Good.
six to seven
Where did you
lines.
get to know about this theory of gifted goods?
Uh, you are marked as
Where
a
is it?
contributor,
Oh, man, that was on
published
the.
on.
Where is it mentioned? I guess I
Uh,
have. Okay.
it's in the Nature thing that you've published. Someone
Yeah,
clicks on your profile,
Okay.
it will show all that you have published.
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. Okay. Theory of gifted goods is. Hold on. मुझे तुम बताओगे हम बताएं? Okay. It's like something like this. Uh, Anyway, there is a very another theory of different goods also, which you can find on Wikipedia, that was given by some economist. Theory of gifted good is like that. I had Airtel one single sentence also, which nature asked me to remove, saying that unless you complete this, don't mention it here right now. And I will tell you what that single sentence was. It was like this, that I, who, I'm quoting that sentence which I had written under this. Is there anything written under that topic of theory of gifted goods? No.
Yes, it is. It is.
It's written there.
Yeah, it's I who consider spending my money for my daughter's
So it is written there. So,
Yeah.
but I think I removed it. I don't know how it is appearing there. Maybe before I removed it was there and that is appearing. It was written like this: I who consider spending money for my daughter's first birthday cake wish to spend the maximum if it is subsidized or if it is sponsored by somebody else, assuming that my daughter's first birthday will appear only once in a lifetime. कुछ इसी टाइप का लिखा हुआ होगा नहीं?
Yes,
Something
sir,
of this
yes,
nature.
yes.
It
It was this
says
exactly.
that
It is this.
it says like this, that if I have to spend on the or if my friends say generally what is the theory of say cost is this how the if demand supply theory says that if cost of something is increasing, its demand decreases. Okay, its demand decreases, but it behaves the other way around. If someone is gifting it to me, that is where the word gifted comes. That I remember that when we were kids and we were using plastic balls only, and because the actual football was very costly, once one of my uncle visited us, incidentally on the same day on which my younger brother's birthday was falling. So he said, my uncle said to my younger brother, कि बताओ तुम्हें gift में क्या चाहिए? And my younger brother was so small that he was not having anything more than दो chocolate or toffee. So I and my elder sister convinced my younger brother to ask for some more precious and अच्छी महंगी वाली चीजें, which we know that our parents won't be able to give it to us, and they will just डांट के बैठा देंगे कि तुम्हें क्या चाहिए फुटबॉल अभी ये छोटे से प्लास्टिक के बॉल से खेल लो. So we asked that if he is asking, if my uncle is asking, what do you want as a gift? So we type of manipulated my our younger brother कि टॉफी या चॉकलेट जो तुम्हें चाहिए छोटा मोटा, that we will give you, and you ask for this thing. This is that as the cost increases, the demand is not decreasing, but demand is increasing when somebody else is providing it to us. That is
Okay.
just a minute.
Yeah, I just wanted to add one thing. It also, like, an offshoot of it is that my behavior is different when I have to spend on something and someone else has to spend on it. So it is about how I behave when I have to bear the cost of it, and how my behavior changes when for the same thing someone else is going to pay for it and there is no feeling on how much is to be spent. So I think that's also an offshoot of this concept of gifted goods.
Okay, yeah, got it.
And you know the line which is written there, I was saying which was written there, but you are telling me that it is still written there. I will check it. That maybe that nature people have said that they will remove the line, but they might have not removed it. It's good. Anyways, from where I got the idea of that sentence is that a relative of mine who gave me once 200 rupees to get a cake, birthday cake for her son. And I went to the shop. Both of us went to the shop. She was not having a pocket to keep the money. She gave it to me. Both of us went to the shop, and she's selected a particular cake of some 150 or 200 rupees. It was 325 or something, 330 rupees. And then we were almost there to get it packed. By the meantime, I got the 1,000 rupee note saying that I will pay for it. For this, I will pay for it. The instant, the same moment that person said, "He just stop, एक minute ago." Then we will take that one. And then she ended taking a 750 rupees cake. So I just thought that, okay, this is the story of gifted goods. At that instant, this theory of gifted goods was born on the eve of her son's birthday, and the theory was born. So it was
Okay.
and that is why I gave an example of that birthday cake only. The I say that what is in a cake and why to buy. I don't like buying a birthday cake for my daughter's birthday. But when I get to know that it is to be sponsored by somebody else, then I say that this is such an auspicious occasion and once in a lifetime occasion that we should buy a bigger cake. Because my daughter's first birthday will come only once in a lifetime. This is how behavior patterns change. When our own money is not at the stake. It is somebody else who is going to pay for it.
Right, maybe we can have a separate talk on this.
That is not
Yeah,
necessary.
but today's generation kids are
Yeah.
so horrible. They won't appreciate that you brought bigger cake on her first birthday. Instead, they will ask for, why don't you brought it on 18th birthday?
Yes, of course.
Because this time I could have a picture and show off to my friends. That time, what I will do?
Of course. Hmm.
And then also another message in the chat box, if you will, Manish.
Yes, I am looking at it. That
Mm.
message of this Keshav of ha ha ha, that is was easier to read. But there is another message by Vaishnavi ji who says, I can relate to everything that you said very, very well, and I'm extremely overwhelmed. I feel like due to these objective measurements, I can't just do my own thing anymore. It leaves no room for personal innovations because I have to constantly put in effort to tend myself to the objective requirements, which require me to study for a test rather than learn without any bounds. I feel like it hinders the natural expression of my abilities and curiosity, and furthermore, even kills interest. When Dr. Kalyanalaxmi Chitta asked, what was your motivation to be in the education system? I honestly wanted to say that I really have no motivation left to continue investing myself in this education system, but that would obviously make me sound like an uninterested, lazy student with no goals. I too was one of those students in my class who got selected for a seminar in Ayuka for my performance in the objective measurements. Though I was quite happy about it back then, but over the years and after reading your article on anti-synergy, which was introduced to me by Dushanji, now I really do feel like a victim of this anti-synergy due to these continuous cycles of tests and the pressure to perform to show that you really have it in you. In the long run, I feel like it has really done more damage than good to my passion sector. I thank you both for identifying and pointing out whether I have left in my student life so far, putting out this in words so accurately. Thank you so much for writing such a mm, good selection of text. What should I say? I don't know. But anyways, Kalyani wants to say something. I just want to say something before handing it over to her that don't pay attention to somebody else's words so strongly that you start feeling so low. Okay, and otherwise, whatever is going on means the behavior at microscopic level and macroscopic levels are different. So otherwise, if you go on thinking about it, so if somebody says you good morning, so you will think, what's the sense of saying his wishing me good morning? Because my morning is not going to be good just because he has said good morning. So what's the point in that? And so I will not wish anybody. It doesn't go this way either, and it doesn't go this way. And don't call yourself as uninterested lazy student. It's not at all. I would call an open-minded, innovative, and introspective student instead of calling you as uninterested lazy student. Okay. Anyways, Kalani wants to add something.
Yeah, Vaishnavi, I really like your name because that's what my niece is also called. Anyways, I mean, coming back to what there's a beautiful saying in English. Too much of East is West. Okay, so don't oscillate between the two extremes. What I would like to tell you, like I'll share my personal experience. That I spent a good 10 years in academics between 2006 to 2016, and honestly, I couldn't get my foot into it on a permanent basis, which is why I decided to move into the banking sector. And trust me, like during those 10 years of academics, I did write a huge number of research papers. I did a PhD in economics. I wrote about 20 odd research papers published in edited books and journals and all over the place. And and yeah, but after in fact joining the banking sector, where nobody is bothered about whether you know how to write anything at all, like as long as you can open accounts and you can recover loans, that's it. Nobody is bothered whether you can write anything beyond A to Z. Okay, but during these last 4 years, in fact, I think the best part of research, what I have done so far in my life, I have done in these 4.5 years. Whether it's trying to do something in of course right at the beginning I made an admission that I was always a hopeless student at maths, but yeah, I've been we've been working on a bit of maths, so like that is something I've done totally out of interest. And I have hardly published 3 research papers in the last 4.5 years, but uh, trust me, those 3 papers or the the working papers on maths that we are working on right now, apart from these, these are far more satisfying than any of the 20 papers that I published when I was in academics. So probably what you do out of your interest, or for that matter, today, I would take a lot more credit and would be more happy about my collection of poems and short stories, which was published in 2012, rather than the huge number of research papers I wrote in edited books and in journals and so on and so forth. So your professional compulsions are one thing. Ultimately, everyone needs to do something to earn your bread and butter. But on the sidelines of that, it's very rare that people get to do what they are interested in as well. So there's one professional compulsion that you have. Keep that separate from your interest if both of them don't coincide. That is what I would say, because trust me, that's what I did, and I've been far more happier because from 10 to 5 when I'm in office, I'm a good banker. हम गाली खाते हैं, हम गाली देते हैं. That is my life from 10 to 5. And post 5 o'clock, I'm working on prime numbers. I'm trying to crack the Goldbach conjecture, and I'm trying to write another collection of poems and short stories. So somewhere each one of us needs to. I'm talking more on a philosophical note now. That you need to probably keep both these two things separate in life. That's okay. Now you would wonder where we are hopping from anti-synergy to, I don't know, philosophy to where all now. But don't get disheartened by what goes on around you. Uh, you know, uh, you just need to devise a way of keeping yourself happy in spite of all the entire system which is going the wrong way around you. Don't let your environment affect you so much. I mean, don't sound so disheartened. It didn't sound good to me, to be honest.
Yes, thank you so much for your insights and also the session.
Yeah, in fact, like you can, I
Mr. Dushyant, anybody out there?
I think Dushyant is inaudible to us.
If anyone of you wants to
Yeah,
say
I got
something,
one question. I got one question from ma'am. Ma'am, you were working on prime numbers. Actually, when I was preparing for NTSC, I made one shortcut to find out whether a number is prime or not. It may be already present. I'd never googled it, and I made it by myself. That to find a prime number, what I do, uh, go to the nearest square of that number. Like I want to find out that 131 is it prime or not. So I check that whether it is divisible. The nearest square number is 144 to it. So I check it whether it is divisible by 1, 2, obviously 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 till 12. If till 12, no, it till 11. If it is divisible till 11, then it is not a prime number. If it is not, then it is a prime. Ma'am, do you have a bit more shorter way to identify a prime number?
Uh,
Uh, Kishori,
Actually, there's one presentation by Manish and Kalyanalaxmi, and maybe you can refer to that if you want. It's available in our YouTube channel. Maybe I can share with you the link. Maybe Manish, like I think this is going a bit off. If you can say something briefly, maybe.
Kishori, would you mind if I take your number from Dushant later and call you or email you regarding this context?
Yes, sir. No problem. No problem. No problem.
Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
And one more thing, I mean, sorry, like I was saying this, that even I could find this thing, I could relate to this thing in my life only a couple of days earlier. Like I realized that, I mean, like the thing I'm doing here in the PE and ME, like I really wish like I could do this for a really long time. Like currently, like I must say I'm working full time on this. Like but then there comes this point that I need to do something to earn some money because society measures my contribution to the society in this way. I still believe even working just in this thing, I'm making a good contribution, but it's not.
But that's not measurable.
Right, that's not measurable and not giving me enough food grains on my table. So I need to do something. That probably I was thinking I'll probably make this an NGO and then maybe look for corporate funding or donations or something so that we can actually have employed people in here who can work full time.
you can become a banker.
Maybe not. Not so.
No,
But yeah,
I mean,
it is.
that was more of a joke. I don't want any of you to become bankers.
I do. I have my friends in bank. Yeah, like they tell me a lot of stuff.
But it is true. The work of Mr. Dushyant is exclusive. He has really, even to me, I have been suppressed by everyone near me because of their inferiority complex. That's I don't know. Whatever it is, they do not allow me to ask questions. They always retain me from asking questions. But the platform which Mr. Dushyant has provided me, yeah, it has opened. It has given me the opportunity to open up and to get in contact with people like uh, ma'am and sir. That's a big thanks to Mr. Dushyant.
Like, yeah,
Recently, you are
there's
having
no
such a fan following that
formalities. Like,
even if you go for elections now, you can have much more than food games there as well.
He can win the elections on the basis of Socrates people that he has connected with them.
Yes, because of this PA and MA group as well.
yeah, right. Thank you very much. Yeah, the questions for 2025. Yes. I don't know. Yeah. Yeah, and by the way, some Keshav like you're using all Mr. Dushyant and that's fine. Like you don't need to use all this. Like this
No,
is
it
like
is my
rather
simple
flat hierarchy
represent my
here.
respect or my all respect to you. So I won't stop using Mr. Dushyant for you, Dushyant. So it will be
Right.
always be Mr. Dushyant.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Keshav. Yeah.
No, you have to say Keshav only. Sorry
Yeah.
for being
Sure.
too much informal.
No issues. So yeah, I guess like this has been past 2.5 hours or something. Maybe like if you want to continue, you can, or like maybe you can have another session, or maybe Manish can share a number. We can have it in private conversations or whatever. Like, what do you think? We should end this right here. Like, everyone satisfied?
More than satisfied, actually. But yeah, time's limited. At least I have to go somewhere. So thank you very much for the session.
We cannot
Thank you very
engage
much.
for that whole teenage things for Mr. Sir and ma'am. So
Yeah, so thank you, Manish, and thanks everybody for this, and also thank you, Vaishnavi, for that really nice message, and everyone else for their active participation, Keshav and everybody. So, Manish, like, if, any closing note or else we'll just close right away.
Thank you. That's all as a closing note. And thanks for the participation. And thanks for giving us the opportunity. And thanks for listening to us. Thank you so much.
Right. Bye, guys. See you all.